Okay. Just confirm that we are live. Perfect. Okay, good morning from Bali, everyone. And good morning, everyone in my part of the world, and good evening, everyone in the other part of the world. I'm so excited that we're finally here for this webinar. We've been talking about this for the last couple of months, and I have been really excited by the response that we're getting and that we've received. And I'm so grateful to have these amazing panelists with us this morning. We're going to be discussing today the use of frequency for our first responders and active and retired military. So I want to just do a little bit of intro, and then we're going to dive in and introduce our panelists. And we're just going to really have an open conversation and discussion about sort of, I think, what Healy's about just overall in general, which is this evolution of health and wellness. And so today specifically, we're going to talk about how that evolution in health and wellness is going to be able to benefit the people that are really out there laying their lives on the line for us. And I think that this is a really, really important niche that Healy serves, and it's a really important niche of our overall collective consciousness. So, where do I want to go first with this? I guess the first thing that I want to say is frequency treatment has been shown to reduce activity in midbrain stress centers and reduce inflammation in the forebrain and quiet the sympathetic nervous system. So obviously, and we're really going to dive into the different types of conditions that affect our first responders and our active and retired military. But we know that PTSD is an issue that's quite common. We know that traumatic brain injury is an issue that's quite common. We know that insomnia and anxiety and depression are all conditions that are quite common in this demographic of people. So, and this isn't new, the use of frequency in treating these conditions. So FSM, as many of us know, frequency-specific microcurrent, which is different to what Healy does, but microcurrent, all treatment all the same, how that, it signals, it works by signaling nervous system functioning, and it's been documented for use with these conditions for almost 20 years. So this isn't anything new, right? And it's been used for traumatic brain injury since 1997. So just to give you an idea, I don't know the global statistics, maybe one of our panelists might, but PTSD affects 7.7 million Americans. And obviously our veterans and our first responders are especially vulnerable to these conditions because of the conditions that they are actively working in every day. So I am going to start this webinar by going over our disclaimers, because I think it's really important to lay all this out on the table before we begin this discussion. Healy is a global company. And so what that means for Healy is that it is licensed and cleared and certified for different uses in different parts of the world. And so I'm going to just read a couple of these disclaimers for you. Please apply whichever disclaimer works for you in whichever part of the world you are in. But overall, the statement that Healy makes is that while scientific research underlies Healy technology, its connection to health and wellness has not been extensively explored or demonstrated. The Healy is not intended to cure, treat, mitigate, diagnose, or prevent disease, but rather to support energetic harmony and enhance recovery, vitality, and well-being. So Healy is a holistic wellness device used to balance and support the body's bioenergetic field. It can analyze imbalances on our physical, mental, emotional, and energetic fields, and then recommends programs and frequencies to bring them back into balance. In the United States, Healy is a microcurrent medical device that has been cleared by the US Food and Drug Administration for the relief of acute, chronic, and arthritis pain and muscle soreness due to overexertion. Healy also has non-medical applications that use individualized frequencies to help balance your mind and body and relieve stress. And then in Europe, Healy is a medical device that is certified for the treatment of pain in chronic pain, fibromyalgia, skeletal pain, and migraine, as well as for the supportive treatment of mental illnesses such as depression, anxiety, and related sleep disorders. And Europe just also states that all other applications of Healy are not recognized by conventional medicine due to lack of evidence in the sense of conventional medicine. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about this incredible device. And really, this webinar, obviously, we are very, very passionate and very excited about this incredible little device that we've all fallen in love with, those of us that are here and panelists on this webinar. So Tara and Sarah's dog just arrived. He sometimes likes to walk himself down the beach in the mornings. They live quite a ways away from us, but he just showed up. So we may have a little bit of dog chaos here this morning. So Tara and Sarah, if you are watching, Bear is here, so not to worry. Okay, so this webinar, though, is really intended to talk about frequency treatment as a whole. So we will be talking about Healy, but I think, obviously we have a lot of research in the Department of Frequency-Specific Microtherapy and Microcurrent. So panelists, feel free to talk about any of this use of frequency treatment when it comes to this very special segment of our population that we are going to be targeting this webinar for today. So with that, I would love for our panelists to just briefly introduce themselves, tell us, why they're passionate about being on this webinar today. And some of them are people that work with first responders, and some of them are first responders or active or retired military. So let's start, Rachel, with you. And if you can just introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about why this webinar for you, why you're passionate about the use of microcurrent or frequency treatment with this demographic and this population.
Sure, thank you so much, Leah. So yeah, of course, my name is Rachel Lee. Excuse my croaky voice right now. So yeah, I live in Brisbane, Australia, and I have a background as 20 years, I'm showing my age now, in the pre-hospital and emergency care settings. So I have spent the last, 16 out of my 20-year career working as a paramedic with the ambulance service here in Brisbane, and also nursing in emergency departments in large metropolitan hospitals. And so, of course, when you're in those environments, you are exposed to trauma and stress on the daily, okay? And obviously that has an impact on your mental health and your emotional well-being. But the interesting thing is that whilst you're actually in those positions and while you're actually, performing your duties in those roles, you don't actually realize how much of an impact that this trauma actually has on us, because we are conditioned, I guess, to actually cap a lot of the trauma inside so you can perform your duties, right? So you can actually get on and do your job. So for me, I knew that I was exposed to a lot of trauma, and I knew that I was in a highly stressful position, but I didn't realize just how significant those impacts had on my emotional and mental health until I stepped away from that arena about 6 years ago. So for me, I got really curious when I looked at this particular device and seeing that disclaimer, that European disclaimer that Leah just stated. Of course, we're all in different markets, but when I saw that European disclaimer about how this microcurrent frequency device can actually support people with pain, fibromyalgia, chronic pain, and, conditions such as anxiety, depression, I got really curious about how this could support me personally, because I had become a lot more aware over the last few years about how my experience in my work had actually impacted my own mental health. And for me, it wasn't necessarily, severe. My symptoms weren't severe. They crept up very insidiously, but I was spending an enormous amount of time managing those symptoms. So I got really curious when I saw that disclaimer and thought that I would try the device. And my results personally have been nothing short of remarkable. Almost unbelievable, in fact, and I won't talk about that now. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But that's kind of why I'm here and why I'm so passionate to share with the communities that we serve, because I know that mental and emotional well-being is something that does creep up very, very insidiously with this cohort of people. And quite often, we don't even recognize that there is a problem until it becomes where it is actually impacting our life. And many of us, I feel, we don't allow ourselves to actually let off that emotional valve, because while we're actually active in service, you can't allow yourself to feel. It's like you can't really do that, because if you did that, then you wouldn't be able to cope. So there's so much of that trauma over the years that is capped in our bodies that really does significantly impact our mental well-being and our emotional state. And it comes on quite slowly. And so I'm very passionate about sharing this with the community of first responders, paramedics, veterans, because I know that this is something that we don't talk about a lot. And I know that this is something that we cap a lot of this, because this is what we have to do to cope in the positions that we're in. So for me, having something like this to support our emotional well-being is just remarkable. And yeah, I'm really truly passionate about sharing that with the cohort. So, because it really does make a difference in the lives of people on an emotional and mental well-being level. You're muted, Leah.
That's so you didn't have to hear all the dog chaos happening in the background. Katie, would you like to go next?
Hello, beautiful people. Thank you so much for having me on here. So my name's Kate and I run a business called Veterans, Supporting Veterans Naturally. I'm into my 19th year in the Australian Army, but I support both Australian and US current serving and veterans, so people that are now out. So I got introduced to Healy by an amazing friend of mine, and I'm like, whoa, what a game changer. Like, this is something that veterans can have in their own home, in their pocket, like a healer in their own home, where they can embrace their own health and support themselves, you know, from the roots up. This is a broken system, I'm afraid to say, where a lot of our beautiful, amazing people who have sacrificed so much for their country are caught up in a health system that doesn't look at them as a holistic, in a holistic approach. And I hope to be a path maker, in a way of dropping ripples in that pond to create change there, not just me, but you know, a collaborative approach, and by empowering people with this device to make a decision to question their own health, to investigate their own health, and to open their eyes to what's possible.
Amazing, amazing, thank you. Carrie, would you like to go next?
Can you hear me? Okay, I had to find the unmute button, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Carrie Allen. I am a counseling psychologist, and I'm an expert in PTSD, depression, spiritual functioning, and cognition. I work with a lot of trauma and crisis, especially with military and veterans, responders, and LEOs, or law enforcement officers. And the beautiful thing I see about Healy that can really be a benefit to them is that there's this thing called automaticity, which means, you know, you get used to running on simmer all the time. You know, your brain and your body work together to stay in this highly aroused state, whether that's anxiety or because of re-experiencing, we call it hyper arousal. They're trained to be hyper aroused, but then when they're sent back home, they're not really taught how to get out of that. And the brain and the body do a really good job of learning the things they need to learn. And then when they're done with that service, or they're no longer in that position to have to be on that constant hyper aroused state anymore, coming out of that state is not very easy. And so the benefit I see is that this is a really good tool to help the brain and the body relearn that it's okay to be calm, that you can trust your body and your brain. When you're getting signals that you need to be on alert, it will be because you actually do need to be. And but help them overall. You know, you see a lot of veterans that come back with chronic pain from bomb squad, for example. Their body's pretty broken up from being out there doing those things. You see responders that are dealing with all the trauma, just like military veterans, you know, coming back saying, hey, I don't know what to do with all of this. It's in my head. And how do we manage all of this? So just helping them get to a healthier state of feeling like they can manage their day to day. Because when we get that calm down, it helps them to process what they need to process. So one of the benefits too that I see, PTSD, the most common co-occurring disorder with PTSD is substance abuse disorder. The second is depression. And veterans have a really high, in comparison to civilians, they have a really high suicide rate. A lot of that comes from pain. A lot of it comes from not being able to get out of that hyper aroused state. It causes them not to be able to enjoy their family, going to, for example, just a movie theater to sit through a movie, or going to a baseball game and getting, you know, past a half of an inning. There's a lot of benefit. And I feel like if they can have a healthier way to manage things, like Kate mentioned, and Rachel, you mentioned, you have to stuff it down, right? You can't just go through every day being in it all the time, and yet it's always bubbling under the surface. And trying to get to that place where you can manage it all and feel like it's doable, I think is a very overwhelming thing. And it's easy for them to have a pill thrown at them, right? Go to another doctor, get a pill, go to another doctor, get a pill. And a lot of them don't want to do that. They want to feel like they're taking back control of their health. And I feel like Healy is a really great way to do that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Trace and Kelly.
Yeah, hi Leah. Thanks. Thanks for having us. We're definitely excited to be here for lots of reasons. We have a lot to share, but we're both military. We've served in different capacities. For me, I'm still active, 26 years, and I think the parts that I really was excited to share. You know, I think a lot of people, when you think about PTSD in military or veterans, you assume it's combat related. So I've had a pretty long career, and as I look back, and I'm getting close to the end, what stands out to me is some of the less obvious things that also cause issues that we have to deal with. You know, there's all kinds of stuff. So the shift work and you know, whatever, working with chemicals, toxic chemicals and toxic vaccines and toxic people and whatever it is, those things just stack up over time. And like Rachel and Carrie both said, you know, it's like you really can't deal with those things while you're in that state, because it's always the mission first. And honestly, it's not just the system, it's the people too. We want that. That's why we're there. We want to serve that in that way. So we always want to be ready. We just, you know, we take our vitamin M, what they call it in the Air Force, or our Motrin, and we suck it up, right? And we move and go. So I'm excited to be here to share some of those other aspects. And Leah, you were asking about some stats. I was doing some reading earlier today, and yeah, 22 vets a day commit suicide, which I guess is about 1.5 times more than non-vet adults. And then about 20% of veterans with PTSD also have other addictions and alcohol issues and things like that. So it's compound as well. So, but yeah, Healy's been amazing for me, and we can talk about some of that stuff as we go.
Yeah, and I have been military 22 years total, 18 and a half full-time, and now I'm a drill status Air National Guardsman. But I was raised in the military. My father was in Vietnam and was in a special ops career field. So literally at the age of 14, I was popping that vitamin M that Trace talked about, because that's what we had in the house and that's what my dad used. And, you know, I think about some of the missions even that he did after Vietnam. He was in a rescue unit. And so even just doing civilian rescues, where some of the traumatization of dealing with seeing children, you know, it's again, something that you just have to move on and move forward. And thankfully, we're spreading this word to that community, and my father, have him on Healy, and it just makes me so happy that he has that type of non, you know, pharmaceutical option.
Amazing. Well, again, thank you all so much for being here. You know, I know that you're all very busy in your own rights, and I'm just so appreciative of you taking the time to be on this panel today. So one of the things that I really wanted to discuss and talk about is, and we've touched on this a little bit, and as we're doing this, you know, it's meant to be a discussion, and not everybody has to answer. But if you feel called to pop in and give some input on one of the questions or part of the discussion, then, you know, just go ahead and unmute yourselves and pop in as you would like. So the stats that Trace just gave around the, you know, 22 vets a day committing suicide, and then 20% of them having other addictions, including substance abuse. So I actually come from a majority of my life career in substance abuse treatment. I own substance abuse treatment facilities. And so I want to talk about a little bit about how this impacts our greater collective, because sure, we can say, you know, we have our first responders and our active and retired military, and they're dealing with these issues of PTSD, and they're dealing with these issues of anxiety and depression and insomnia and traumatic brain injury, which comes with a whole, I don't even, you know, maybe we'll touch on that as well. That comes with a whole host of other scenarios and affects life in a very significant way. But how are these people coming back, and or maybe not coming back if they're not if they're just responders? How is it affecting our greater collective as a whole? Because I think that, you know, for those of us that are not first responders and are not active and retired military, sure, we can be compassionate, but ultimately, why should we care? Why should we care as a collective, other than its fellow human beings suffering? So I'd love to just talk about the impact that, you know, this group of our collective suffering with these conditions has on our greater population and on the greater collective. You know, we know that addiction has a tremendous economic impact globally, and everything from, you know, hospital visits to insurance premiums. It is it's an epidemic globally, obviously. And I know that it goes hand in hand with a lot of these issues that first responders and active and retired military face when they're trying to deal with, you know, parasympathetic nervous system overload, and all of these other conditions. So I'm really interested to hear your take on how this smaller group of our collective actually, how that ripple goes out into our greater collective. Am I frozen?
Can I try to answer that a little bit, Leah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So just one perspective on that. I think for starters, as a collective, I think when you're talking about the core of our society, these people are people who sacrifice. Like Rachel said, they give and give and give and give and give. And these are fathers, their mothers, their brothers, their sisters, you know, sons and daughters. Their ability to function, it affects the core of the family unit. it affects everything on every level. I don't know that there is any area that's not touched by this type of thing. We as human beings were not designed to live in that constant state of trauma, whether it's direct or vicarious or just high levels of stress. We can handle high levels of stress for a very short amount of time, but we're not designed to handle large amounts of stress for extended periods of time. And I think that's part of what is a very common factor in all of this. And when it affects the person, they're part of a family in another unit, and that really affects the functioning of the family unit. And so I can't say enough about how if we can find ways to increase the holistic approach to wellness for this whole group and all the subgroups in it, I think that goes a very long way in boosting confidence in that families can feel empowered. There's things that they can do that can help and assist and create a better environment for health and for connection. Because one of the common things in a lot of these scenarios are an inherent disconnection that comes from everything around them just to be able to function and cope. So in my thought process, that's a very big part of how it impacts the collective.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else want to weigh in on that topic? Or
Yeah,
I will touch on. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Sally. I was just going to say further to what Dr. Carrie Allen was saying was really, I think, as a mother who started to realize how my ongoing and years of stress and trauma was manifesting as symptoms of anxiety for me, I became very aware that, as a mother watching my small children in a playground, for example, and just my whole perception that, all I could see was danger everywhere. Like I was seeing a child fall off the monkey bars and cracking their head open and having a catastrophic brain injury. Like this is the way that these sorts of things manifest. And it's so slow and insidious, as I was saying before. And, to have a highly sort of stressed mother, I was always really scared of being a helicopter parent, right? Because I wanted my children to be able to explore their world and to have the experience of their world, and to figure out, the environment around them themselves without having a highly stressed mother who was always scared and always seeing the world as something very dangerous. And so I know personally as a mother with small children, I was very aware. I mean, I know that there are a lot of people and mums out there that may not be as aware, but I was very, very aware of that. And I constantly had to manage that and, talk myself through, the rational versus irrational thought and things like that. But I was spending an enormous amount of time doing that and managing my symptoms. And so with that, not only did that have personal consequences for me, spending all of my hours managing myself, but it also obviously impacted my children because I was this stressed out mum who didn't want them to play. So, I mean, that's just one example of how this manifests in the family unit. So yeah, I could definitely relate to what you were saying there, Carrie. And I feel like that happens a lot within the family unit, particularly with parents. And that's when I first started to notice how these symptoms were manifesting for me.
amazing. Kate, were you wanting to say something?
Sure. Sorry.
You're right.
Oh, okay. So one of the things I've noticed still being in the military is that there are some very measurable things that we do to basically measure readiness for the entirety of the organization. And what falls into that also is people and whether they're ready or not. And so every year we receive performance reports. Every year we're supposed to do a fitness test. We're supposed to have feedbacks with our supervisors. And for those who have experienced traumatic events that we've seen and are actually processing it or trying to you see a decline in all those things. Now, like we talked about, some of those people aren't dealing with that yet. So at some point, they're going to, though, and usually it's when they come out of the military or are no longer under that complete duress of having to perform constantly. So the way I see it is just as a collective, is that readiness, that the person being able to perform at their optimum level is going to slowly deteriorate, and they won't be measured anymore the same way they were while they were in. And so it's not as easy to catch.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a good lead into the next question. I mean, I think, you know, we definitely know that veterans upon returning don't report PTSD as frequently as they should. And it has to do, I mean, I think there's a lot of factors at play there, but I think that, you know, even for all the reporting that we have, that it's probably just a fraction of the actual problem when it comes to all of these issues: anxiety, depression, addiction, PTSD. Why, from your perspective, why do you think that is? Why do you think that our first responders and our active and retired military are hesitant to talk about the struggles that they're having and the struggles that they're facing? And is there a way, well, let's just start with that. Why do you think that is?
So I'd love to talk into that, but I'd also like to say something further to the question before, which is not all veterans or police or that have PTSD or trauma, some of them actually have injuries or chronic pain where they can't actually do their job anymore, their job that they, you know, cut them and they bleed green, love, you know, want to stay in the army forever or anything like that. So they're forced out into, you know, the real world, and they're institutionalized. They love the army. They don't then have their friends. They're pumped up to the eyelids on pills. And, you know, they turn to what they know, you know, which is drugs and alcohol. And they're the sorts of people that we also need to be helping and remembering about. And some of these people may not have even had the chance to serve their country overseas, but they did serve their country by being in the military. With your latest question, I think I'd like to focus on our police force here in Australia. Phenomenal people, but if they were to say that they were stressed, their gun and badge is taken off them and they can't do their job they love, their job that they, you know, it's their everything. So I feel that if someone had a Healy in their life and they were supporting themselves holistically from the base, from their home, you know, themselves and their family, that the support network for themselves would be stronger. They've also got us as a community. They've got somewhere they can turn, so they don't have to say that they're stressed at work, so they don't have to get their gun and badge taken off them. And the same with military. There's such a stigma around saying, you know, I've got anxiety because, oh, there's a trip to Afghan coming up soon, I'm going to miss out on going. I'm not going to tell them that I'm having these dreams or these thoughts or these things because I don't want to miss out on the trip. And then they go and they see more trauma, or they're, you know, something happens and they come back and it's just boom, 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 all on top of each other. If they've got a Healy, if they've got us, if they've got this community of a holistically minded, amazing, phenomenal humans, they've got so much more than just themselves thinking they're doing it all alone.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I can definitely talk of that as well. I think there is a lot of undiagnosed PTSD and anxiety within the first responder space, definitely, and I'm sure that goes across the board. And I feel like that's largely due to stigma and largely due to, you know, being indisposable, really, because there's always going to be someone that they can replace you with, and it's almost seen as though you're a liability. So it's a sad reality, but I feel like it is the reality. And I don't feel as though, I mean, there's a lot of people too who may be afraid of going on medication, for example. But, you know, we know that there are other options out there. So, and Healy is, you know, incredible. So.
Yeah, I'll just touch a little bit more on it's the same with the military. And And like Kelly was talking about readiness earlier and how it's measured. Every single stat about us, the medical, everything about us is measured. And if you reach a certain threshold, then you're basically not ready. You can't fight. You can't do your job, whatever it is. And like Katie mentioned, you know, our identities, a lot of us are tied to our job. We do it so long. It's in us. It's a culture. It's who we are, right? And so if you can't do it, you know, now it impacts your psychological health. Yeah, so there's just a stigma associated with that.
Yeah, I remember growing up, my father would tell me it was something that was not done. You did not go to see mental health, but he knew better and he went to see his priest. He knew we needed to talk to somebody. But yeah, they're getting better. At least they're making the efforts too.
It's interesting as you approach the end of a military career, especially if you're getting ready to retire, they basically do an assessment on you and they assign a number to a percentage how broken you are. And, you know, so everyone starts coming out with all these issues toward the very end. And then, you know, so they might say you're 50% broken, right? You have all these things wrong with you that you've held inside, and they've manifested physically, emotionally, all these different ways that certainly impact you years after, or even forever, the rest of your life after you serve in whatever capacity. I think that goes across the board.
So obviously our systems and structures are failing our first responders and our active and retired military. I do actually want to talk about something quite controversial, and that is, do you feel that pharmaceutical medicine has failed this demographic of people? And if so, how and why?
Look, I don't have any personal experience with pharmaceuticals, but I feel as though what they do is potentially just cover the problem and the symptom. And I don't feel as though pharmaceuticals actually get to the root cause. And I feel like if you could get to the root cause, then you wouldn't need the pharmaceuticals. And so that's always been my philosophy. And I was always aiming to get to the root cause. And, you know, I thought that I had got to the root cause through all my other practices, like, you know, CBT and meditation and, you know, convincing myself that some of those fears and worries were irrational. But the Healy just took that root cause kind of treatment to a whole nother level, like to a point where I discovered really more about who I was, because I had the time to actually connect back in with who I was and what brought me joy, because I hadn't really connected with that before because I was so busy managing the root cause and the symptoms. So yeah, I feel, I'm not saying that pharmaceuticals aren't necessary for many people, that they are, but I don't feel like they get to the root cause.
Thank you, Rachel. I totally agree. I'll be really quick. I totally agree, Rach. I would just like to quickly say that, you know, I want the individual, so the person that's going through it, to want to question their own health, to want to know why, instead of just listening to the first person that tells them, take this pill, or, you know, do this, do that, you know, oh, okay, thank you. What about if I try this? And just want more, you know, that would be great if that happened.
Yeah.
I agree with both of you. I think part of the difficulty is they're told that medication will help them feel better. And then when that medication, you know, it's a process, right? For example, depression medication, they have to gradually up the dosage, and it's weeks and weeks and weeks. And then they'll say, well, if that's not helping, let's try more medication, or let's add an additional medication. Sometimes it's going in with the hope that this will get it under control so that I can at least function, and then find other means to help me so that I don't have to be in, for example, chronic pain all the time or be depressed all the time. The difficulty with that is a lot of people are restricted by insurance and different coverages that they have. And if you don't have a service or something that's covered under those insurances or those policies, it makes it very difficult financially for a lot of people to get the services, no matter whether they're a veteran or a responder or frontline healthcare workers, paramedics. It really makes it very difficult, because I think people think they make a lot of money in these professions, and they really don't. And when they're caring for a family, they're gonna take the cheaper route if that's what it takes to try to control it until they can find a reasonably affordable method. And so Healy, for example, if it can provide additional support with what they're coping with, pain in the body, for example, that's a lot less expensive for them over the long haul than trying to go for a whole bunch of treatments they're not sure will work, or reducing pain in hopes to be able to reduce medication. So I think as a whole, across the globe, we need to make affordable options to help people who are really wanting to take a more holistic approach, and integrate that to kind of help them make that transition rather than expecting them to figure that out. But a lot of people don't know that it's available. So to your point, Katie, you know, if they're asking about that, the problem is a lot of them do not ask, because when they do, when they try, they're told, yeah, that's not going to work, or that's not covered, or hey, it's going to be this much money. And it's, you know, when you're talking about putting food on your table or paying for something that you think is going to make you feel better, it's the nature of what these people do. They'll sacrifice themselves for their family and for the greater good. And so it's kind of a catch-22. And you know, a lot of them don't want, for example, a lot of military veterans, they come back and they say, hey, you know, what's going on with me? And say, oh, everybody has PTSD. It's no big deal. You'll deal with it. Get over it. And then when they don't, they're labeled. There's a lot of stigma. Responders too, they're told they're weak. Here in the States, nurses, if they're not coping well, they can go through a program called TPAP, and they're told, yeah, we're going to help you with this. We're going to get you the resources that you need. We're going to help you with all this stuff. But then they're pulled out of their position, and then they're lucky if they can find another one. And finding another job means they have to disclose they're in that support program. So there's a lot of things as a collective that I think we really need to work globally to make more support available, to make holistic options the better way to go, not the alternative.
Yeah. Kelly or Trace, did you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. Well, I remember being, again, very early in my career, I was in an Army hospital, and they gave me this book that was like, hey, if you have a bunch of ailments, you know, look one up and here's the cure. And something as simple as a headache, I looked up and it said, take an aspirin. I was like, maybe I should try drinking some water first. I don't know, moving around a little bit. So again, I think we've come a long way. I've actually seen some chiropractors in military hospitals. I've seen some acupuncturists. A lot of it depends on the doctors, if they're able to take some additional certifications and stuff. So there is a movement in that direction, but you know, there is definitely, you're going to get your flu shot every year, or you're going to be not ready and you won't be able to deploy, and that could cycle down, and you could eventually, you know, who knows, get your security clearance taken away because you won't do this, won't comply. So, and which would in turn make you lose your job.
So we've talked a little bit about stigma. And so my next question is, due to dogma, whether it's, you know, within these different like mini societies, so whether it's societal dogma or whether it's patriarchal dogma or societal dogma, is this demographic of people less likely to seek a holistic treatment protocol for these issues? Is there any dogma around holistic wellness? Is there any stigma around holistic wellness?
I would think that like people are unaware of what else is available. Like I feel like we have a role here to really help bring awareness around alternative holistic therapies that can support people. And until we have, I guess, some buy-in from, you know, the corporations or authorities or organizations, you know, I feel like that, you know, that's where it could start. But I also feel we've all got a, you know, individual responsibility to share what's worked for us. But yeah, I feel like that, yeah, I just don't even feel like that's an option. You know, I know that there's a lot more focus on work-life balance, but nowhere near as much really focus on actually maintaining your mental and emotional health. You know, there's suggestions to get outside and go for a walk and, you know, do all the things. But in terms of, you know, holistic approaches to specific ailments, anxiety, PTSD, for example, I'm not sure that there's a great awareness and a great push for that from what I've seen.
I think for a lot of responders, I think if you can just reduce their pain by a notable amount, that increases their well-being exponentially.
Yeah, I'll say, you know, in the Air Force, at least, it's just such a small, tight community that we're just not aware of those types of things unless you have friends that aren't in there that, you know, might talk about it. So, you know, I know more recently psychological health has become highlighted, but it's honestly, I think it's just because of the impact on readiness, the suicides, the problems that it causes. But I don't really feel like there's a big enough push to mitigate any of that and really go after the root of the problems. And like, I didn't really become aware of some more holistic ways to handle these issues until just a few years ago when I started just doing the research on my own and reading and then becoming aware. And then, gosh, when Healy came along, it's just, yeah, it was amazing. So I'm add to that.
Yeah, just I think Carrie touched on it too, is that if you're going out to get holistic help, you are then paying for it on your own most of the time. TRICARE, the military insurance usually is not covering that. And a lot of the times you have to also report when you are seeing outside medical or whatever back to the military as well, which also people don't want to do because that could come with reparation, quite honestly.
Yeah. So I would love to hear just a little bit about each of your experiences with Healy and why you feel like microcurrent and frequency treatment is so important in this demographic and for a treatment of some of these conditions that we've been talking about. Maybe we shouldn't say treatment, for balancing of our bioenergetic field to help relieve some of these symptoms of some of these conditions that we've been talking about.
Sure, I'd like to go first. What I've found, my favorite is the anxiety program in Pain and Psyche. I love to use that one with people that I'm showing the Healy to. And an analogy that one of the male veterans used with me that I thought was really good was like, there's a bookshelf and all your books are all scattered on this bookshelf, and that's your mind when you've got anxiety. And what that program does is it sweeps all the books off the bookshelf and it just stacks them all back perfectly. And I'm like, wow, what a description, you know. And he said after that one session, which goes for 20 minutes, he said he was productive for the whole day. And he's like ringing me up going, can I have more of that, Healy? Bring it around. So, you know, these sorts of things are so simple, and that's just one of the, you know, 120 programs that you can do. So yeah, phenomenal.
Amazing. Just for everyone that's watching on the webinar, if you have questions for the panelists, we are going to open up a little bit of Q&A. Just please type them in the Q&A box, and we'll answer a couple of questions from the attendees of the webinar as well. But I'd love for everyone to kind of weigh in on this particular question. So whoever's called to go next, that would be great.
Sure, yeah, I'll go. For me, you know, like I said earlier, it's 26 years of things that were just stacked up and pressed down and pressed down. And as soon as I started using Healy, the most noticeable thing right away, the most immediate effect was pain. Pain is just gone and pretty amazing. So I run this program called Release. I run it every day now. So instead of any kind of medication or anything like that, it's just release and that's it. And that's all it takes. But I think even, you know, after a little bit longer using it, one of the even better part of it is what I call these, you know, unexpected side effects, like less resistance. You know, especially when I was younger, I tend to resist it a lot. So anything didn't go exactly how I expected, you know, but and that I noticed that fading away these days. More consistent sleep, and honestly, I don't even run the sleep programs. So I think just frequencies in general are helping everything, and mental clarity definitely improved. Yeah, so I really feel like it's kind of just unpacking all the stuff that over the years, you know, I can feel it slowly over time, just improving.
Amazing.
Yeah, look, certainly for me, what I found with Healy, and it's actually difficult to put into words because there is so much that happens. You know, it's so complex, you know, how much this device can actually do. But what I found is that I actually thought I was pretty aware of where I was at, but you know, because I was constantly, and it had become part of my life to be in constant management mode of, you know, the fear and the stress and the worry, that just became second nature to me. So it was almost like that was my normal. And so when Healy came into my world, I just ran the programs that it suggested to run. And some of them were mental balance programs and some of them were the anxiety programs as well. And what I found is that I actually became a whole lot more connected to myself and found joy for the first time in a really, like genuine joy for the first time in a really long time. And my relationships with not only myself, but everybody around me deepened and strengthened. And it's because I found myself no longer managing all those symptoms all the time. So the fear and the worry would not even actually enter my head anymore. So I was no longer managing that because it was not coming in. So that in itself is truly, like, you can't even put that impacts of that to words. Like it's just priceless, because the ripple effects that has brought to not only me, but my family and all my relationships and my experience of life is just, yeah, you can't actually put any price on it. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, so I think, like Trace mentioned, the release programs are amazing. But if I could, Lee, if we have just a couple minutes, I want to give you kind of, not necessarily from a curative perspective, but from the neurobiological perspective, why those programs are so important. And you can find all this in the research. All you have to do is look up the studies that have to do with basically how emotion is stored in the body. There's a neurobiological connection. We have an emotional memory capacity. And when we turn off, so to speak, from the neck down, and we're trying to manage those emotions, what happens is that emotion doesn't process out of the body. And so, like Trace mentioned, the pain. So what happens? We end up with physical disease processes that come from the dealt with, or the stuff that we've stuffed down and not dealt with emotionally. So you're talking about increased occurrence of heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, swollen joints, pain in the body, inflammation. There's so much that happens when emotion is capped from the neck down, and none of that processes out. So release is a very interesting program because you can actually feel weird sensations in the body where emotion has been stored from a negative event or experience or just high amounts of stress. And when you feel that release, you'll actually feel like the pain physically move from one area of the body to the other, almost like it's just coming up and out. So the frequency, what it does is it allows the cells, I think Trace used the word resistance. It reduces resistance for positive energy flow through the cell. That creates a more balanced effect. And when that happens, that emotion, that negative stuff that's stored in the body, it just processes out, which is a really amazing thing. And we do a lot of this type of release. There's several things like somato emotional release, craniosacral therapy. There's things like that. But we do with EMDR, which is eye processing, eye movement reprocessing, and desensitization. So that's like reprocessing memories, right, to help the body to release. But if you can do that with the Healy, with frequency, that's huge. And like Trey said, when you start relieving the pain in the physical body from everything that the body's holding on to, and your cells are less resistant to positive energy flow, your cells are even down to every little bitty part of your cell, your mitochondrial DNA function better, your everything that's meant to move waste out of the body to help the cells rejuvenate on a healthier level. It improves it, just by releasing all of that negativity, the body functions inherently better on every level. And so for me, release, the anxiety programs, the balance programs, all of those are really good programs that help. But release is a really important one, especially whenever you have trauma that's involved. So I hope that helps somebody who kind of wanted to know why that's helpful.
That was incredible, Carrie. Thank you so much for that description and all of that information. I feel like this panel has been really, really amazing, and all the perspectives are so incredible. So again, super thankful for all of you being here. Just so everyone at home is aware, these do go a little bit longer because we are sort of having this open roundtable discussion. Replay will be available in the Quantum Evolution group and also in my group, Quantum Health Infinite Wealth. Definitely would love for you to hang in there with us if you're called, but you'll also be able to catch this on the replay. But we're going to dive back in and continue the conversation. Did we get everyone on that? Yeah, I think we got to everyone there, right? Or no, not Kelly and Trace. And we lost them, and they're back.
Trying to get back on.
I got so lost in what Carrie was saying, I kind of lost track of the questions. So that was amazing, Carrie. Thank you.
Yeah.
So your experience, what is your program, or programs that you have helped you? What has been your personal experience? How has this helped you?
For me, it's been interesting. I came off of active duty, and I had a year to kind of decompress. And literally, I would sit in a room and just be like, I don't know what to do. And so I can't imagine if I had had Healy at that time, how much more things would have just progressed at a quicker pace. But since having Healy, the amount of clarity and energy, and just almost like any kind of the dusty layer and the layers of crust that have kind of stacked on have just been wiped away. And that new feeling when you were like 25 and we're going to conquer the world and everything, was great, and you'd jump out of bed, that's back. That's the best way I can explain it. And my favorite program is probably Pure. So.
I'll say, if we can touch on this part, on the other side of Healy, the programs are all amazing. And like I said, I love what I call the bonus side effects. But one thing that we have talked a lot about for opportunity is the business side of Healy. And especially for, I've seen a lot of military, they separate or they retire. And especially if it's before retirement, that now they've kind of lost their identity or purpose. And so there's a lot of unemployment. And we really feel like this could be an opportunity to serve in a different capacity, which, I mean, everyone in the military, that's usually why they join in the first place. So that this is another way to serve and help out so many people. So, and obviously, you can build a team, and I'm really loving that part of it myself. I miss some of the really awesome teams that I used to get to work with earlier in my career. And I feel like now I have my Healy team, and it's so awesome to pour back into them. So I have this new sense of purpose in that regard. And it's been amazing. So.
And even what Katie brought up earlier, even just as clients, to be able to have this new community where you have a team and you're part of a team that's got a mission, and that mission is wellness, not only for you, but for others, and you are welcome, and people celebrate and want to hear how well you're doing. That is profound.
I love that. So I was having a thought as all of you were speaking, actually. And, I think the incredible thing about this device is it's this small, and you literally can take it with you anywhere you go. And it is, and if you want to be discreet, you can tuck it in your sleeves and put it in your pocket. So you don't have to wear it as proudly as most of us Healyites, or whatever we're called, do, where we always have it on display. But it can be something that's very discreet. And I think, for me, I know that, my grandfather was in the Marines and was also in the Army. He served in Korea, in the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. And so it was always about dignity for him. And he didn't want people to see him sick, and he didn't want people to know he wasn't well, and he didn't want people to know when he was suffering with stress or anxiety, or having flashbacks or any of those things. It was about dignity for him. And one of the things that I think so beautiful about this device is that being able to use this in the privacy of your home is something that really allows help and rebalancing and relief of symptoms with privacy, but also with dignity. And I think that that's something that's really, really important for our first responders and our active and retired military. There's so many beautiful things about this device. And I want to talk a little bit about the actual device and about what it does, because I think that's important. And I think having all of you with such different perspectives on here is beautiful, because we all obviously describe Healy a little bit differently. But I would love for us to kind of just do a chain of description of what is Healy. And so each of us can kind of weigh in on what actually does this device do for the people that are new to Healy, and maybe something that you have found that has been really unique about this device in your journey. And that can be in any area. It doesn't need to be specifically related to PTSD or anxiety or traumatic brain injury. So Rachel, let's just start with you. So, what is Healy? And if you guys can try to sort of add on to what the person before you shared, that would be great.
I know we don't have all day, so I'll try and sum this up in like a sentence or two. But I feel like Healy is a tool for self-mastery. It's a tool for self-actualization. And it is a tool that allows us to take more responsibility and put the power of healing back in our own hands. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Kate, do you want to hop in next?
Yeah, I feel like this is something that can help people empower themselves with their own health. So yes, mastery, beautiful. And, you know, the aura scans as well in the resonance model is something so phenomenal that people can dive into their energy centers within their body and look at their emotions and see what's coming back and go, oh, okay, yeah, wow, that makes sense. Maybe I need to do some meditations around my heart or something like that. It gives them a bit of direction and clarity.
Yeah, lovely. Carrie?
Okay, so I'm going to say it's a powerhouse in a little bitty box. It's really, all of the stuff that you can do with this is really amazing. And like Kate mentioned, I love the scans. You can kind of figure out where you have the most resistance in the cells in your body and your bioenergetic field, what it needs. And you know, gives you an idea of some things that you like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's why I experienced that, right? So it gives you an opportunity to take a different approach and become more aware of yourself on multiple levels, physical, mental, emotional, and to use this one little bitty thing to address all of those areas in such a great way without having to add another pill or another supplement or another something. Like, this is working at the core. And I think that's what's very exciting about Healy.
Amazing. Trace and Kelly.
So my call sign is actually Pixie. And to me, Healy is its own little way of getting pixie dust to a certain extent. It's a way of recharging in a way where you don't have to take 3 days to do it. It will help you and come alongside you with what you're doing and to recharge and operate at a level that is far exceeding what you thought was possible to continue at still, and not in a pushed way, but in a really happy, delightful way. I would say that's for me what it is.
Yeah. We have a friend who calls it her pocket unicorn. So I think that's my favorite description. And I do wear it in uniform, and I tuck it all in and you can't see it. So that's great. I think the most unique but awesome thing for me, it's really the awareness that a lot of us talked about already, but we've got to see it in our other relationships and family as well. So, you know, we had to have all of our family have this, and the awareness and positive impact it's had on all of their lives, it's exponential, and it's been almost overwhelming at times to see the impact and the change, and it's so good. So yeah, it's
kind of like a little pocket of Zen. I don't know whether you can relate, but it's kind of like you become so much more Zen after you've had Healy in your world. It's crazy. My kids are like, put the Healy on, Mum, put the Healy on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, there are other handheld microcurrent frequency devices on the market. And I think it's important to just talk a little bit about what makes Healy so unique. And this will probably be our last bit of this webinar. But for me, the wow factor and the thing that just blows my mind time and time again is the incredible quantum sensor that exists inside of this device. So there's two things that make Healy really, really unique. The first is that this little device right here has 144,000 frequencies in it. There is not another handheld device on the market that has that many frequencies. But that really isn't the thing that makes it incredible. The thing that makes it incredible is this incredible quantum sensor in here. And what that sensor does is it interacts with your bioenergetic field in the moment. So if I run a scan on myself right now, this quantum sensor is tapping into my bioenergetic field, and it's determining what frequencies my field needs most in this moment. And in addition to that, it then goes on to customize the available programs that come with Healy to what my body needs. So say we have a pain and psyche, say we have an anxiety program, and there are 500 frequencies in that anxiety program. I don't need all 500 of those frequencies. I may only need 4, I may need 10. And so when I run my Healy, for the first 9 minutes of that program, Healy is actually tapping into my bioenergetic field and testing which of those 500 frequencies I need right now, today. And then it's only going to deliver me those frequencies. So this is completely individualized. It's completely customized frequency treatment. And that to me is really the thing that blows my mind. So if you are interested in knowing more about the product and more about what Healy actually does and more of the specifics, we have an incredible amount of webinars and resources inside the Quantum Evolution group. And let me see if I can actually just drop that here in the, I'm going to drop it here in the comments of the webinar for anyone that's watching. If you haven't already joined the Quantum Evolution group, definitely go get yourself over there. There are so many resources and so much information on Healy. There is an incredible business opportunity that comes with Healy. And I will tell you something, that once you start using this device, you would share it with everyone you know, regardless of whether you had the ability to make money from it. But the beauty of Healy is that it is a social selling model. And so you do have the opportunity to make money from sharing something that I guarantee you will share anyway. And right now we have this incredible global promotion happening where you can save 500 to 1,000 US dollars per device, 500 to 1,000 euro. I don't know the rest of the currencies, so you'll have to get a currency converter. But it's an incredible opportunity between now and September 6th to save globally on this device. I think that's really important also, because for many of our unemployed first responders and veterans, obviously making an investment in something like this can be quite difficult. And so I think it's beautiful that the company is offering this global promotion right now, making this device more accessible than it typically is. I will tell you, hands down, I always say I would pay 10 times what I paid for my Healy. It has impacted my life that much. I can't imagine ever being without it. It's impacted every single area of my life, and up-leveled and expanded every single area of my life. So we are a social selling model. If you are interested in knowing more about Healy, please go back to the person that referred you to this group if you're watching in one of the groups, or referred you to this webinar if you're watching the webinar. It's really important to us that we support the people that are supporting Healy. So please go back to the person that introduced you about Healy if you want more information about the business opportunity that is Healy. I just dropped the link for the Quantum Evolution group in the chat, so you should have that. There was one question I want to answer where somebody asked about the pads. If you can get a little bit of gel, microcurrent gel to put underneath the pads, that may solve the problem of not getting as much of a charge through the pads. So that was just a question that had been asked that I figured I would. Here is the link to the group again. I just dropped it in there again. So now you've got the link to the Quantum Evolution group. Definitely join us over there. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for being here and sharing your incredible wealth of knowledge and wisdom. I am so appreciative, and this was just really epic. We are doing this roundtable webinar series every Thursday for the indefinite future. We have many incredible, amazing webinars. So we'll be here in the Quantum Evolution group every Thursday. And then just stay tuned on the interwebs for more information on the next ones that are coming up. I don't even remember for sure which one is next week, so you'll have to stay tuned. But thank you, and have an amazing day wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.